The story of Dexter Morgan has always balanced on a knife's edge justice or hypocrisy, father or monster, man or myth. But in Dexter, New Blood, everything finally comes crashing down. The ending is shocking, heartbreaking, and controversial, leaving fans torn between closure and betrayal. And in this video, we're breaking down exactly how it all ends. And what that final moment really means? Dexter Morgan has never been the kind of character you simply watch. From the very beginning, he has been the kind of character you live with inside your head, in your questions about morality, and in your uncomfortable empathy for a man who kills. For 8 seasons of the original Dexter, we followed his double life, the blood spatter analyst by day and the serial killer guided by the code by night. His story was always about control, about walking the razor-thin line between justice and horror. And yet, the original series left audiences dissatisfied. Many felt cheated by the ending, where Dexter sailed away into exile, escaping punishment after years of killing. This is where Dexter New Blood steps in, not as a casual revival, but as a resurrection, an attempt to give both the character and the fans something more final, more decisive. Set years after the events of Miami, we find Dexter living under a new identity in the cold, isolated town of Iron Lake. He goes by the name Jim Lindsay. A quiet man who hides his violent past under the snow of a small-town life. He avoids killing, avoids the code, and even attempts a normal relationship. But Dexter Morgan is not someone who can ever escape himself. The dark passenger, that inner voice that drives him to kill, is always present. And in this series, the mask begins to crack. From the start, New Blood felt like a ticking time bomb. The town, the people, and most importantly, Harrison Dexter's long-lost son were like threads pulling him back into his old life. The show made it clear that Dexter couldn't run forever. His sins were too many. His past was too bloody. And the irony of New Blood was this: the more Dexter tried to build a normal life, the closer he came to destroying it. The more he tried to connect with Harrison, the more his lies unraveled. By the time we reach episode 10, the finale, we are no longer watching a man hiding from the world. We are watching the world finally catching up with him. Angela, the town's chief of police and Dexter's girlfriend, starts to piece together who Jim Lindsay really is. Old crimes resurface, evidence mounts, and Harrison, the boy Dexter hoped to guide, begins to see his father not as a protector, but as a predator. The ending doesn't just arrive, it erupts. The power of this introduction to the finale lies in its inevitability. Dexter has always walked in shadows, but shadows cannot last forever. Sooner or later, the truth demands light. And as we move into the final episode, every lie Dexter has told, every crime he has committed, every body left behind Miami, Iron Lake, and beyond closes in like a storm. The question is no longer if Dexter will pay for his sins. The question is how. This is why the finale matters so deeply. It isn't just about a shocking scene or a dramatic twist. It's about the story coming full circle. For years, Dexter killed by following his father Harry's code. Kill only those who deserve it. But by the end, that code has shattered. The man who once believed he was a force for justice becomes exposed for what he truly is, a man who takes life, who manipulates love, who cannot outrun the monster inside. And the arrival of Harrison in his life forces that mirror onto him. His son becomes both witness and judge, pushing Dexter toward a fate no one could have predicted, yet everyone felt was destined. So before we dive into the blow-by-blow breakdown of episode 10, it's important to understand this. Dexter, New Blood isn't simply a sequel. It's a correction, a rewriting of the character's final chapter. Where once he sailed away into obscurity, now he faces consequence, judgment, and perhaps for the first time in his life, clarity. And it's in this clarity that the ending gains its true power. A finale of Dexter, New Blood doesn't waste a second. From the moment episode 10 begins, we know the calm is over. The world around Dexter, which he has so carefully constructed in Iron Lake, is collapsing. Angela, the chief of police and the woman who trusted him the most, has connected the dots. Clues that seem scattered suddenly form a clear picture. And in that picture, she doesn't see Jim Lindsay, the quiet shop worker she thought she loved. She sees Dexter Morgan, the Bay Harbor butcher, The tension begins with Dexter's arrest. For years, Dexter slipped past the law. He outsmarted Miami, Metro, staged crime scenes, and silenced anyone who came too close. But now he is handcuffed in a small-town jail, his double life finally cornered. Angela is relentless. She lays out the evidence, the needle marks, the ritualistic kills, the trail of blood that stretches from Florida to New York. What makes this moment powerful isn't just that Dexter is caught, it's that he is caught by someone who loved him, someone who believed in him. That betrayal cuts deeper than the handcuffs around his wrist. As Angela confronts him, Dexter tries his old tactics: deflection, charm, rationalization. He insists he kills only the guilty, that his code separates him from the monsters he hunts. But this time, the excuses don't land. Angela doesn't see justice in Dexter's eyes, she sees blood. She sees a man who thinks he is above the law. And for once, Dexter feels something he has spent years avoiding: fear. But while Angela represents the law, it is Harrison who represents the heart of this finale. The story pivots when Dexter realizes his son sees the truth. Harrison has looked up to his father, tried to understand the darkness inside him, and even considered following the code. But as he witnesses the chaos his father creates, Harrison begins to pull away. He starts to see that Dexter's code isn't noble, it's poison. It turns every relationship into a lie, every bond into a weapon. The episode escalates when Dexter makes a desperate move. Knowing the walls are closing in, he kills Logan, the friendly police officer who had trusted him. This moment is critical. Logan is innocent, and killing him breaks Dexter's one unshakable rule: never kill the innocent. In that single act, Dexter erases the very foundation of his code. He proves not only to Angela, but to Harrison, that he is no longer guided by justice. He is guided by survival, by selfishness, and this is where the tragedy sharpens. Harrison sees Logan's death and realizes his father is not the man he thought he was. Dexter, the mentor, the avenger, the man with a code, he's gone. What stands in front of Harrison is simply a killer. A man who takes lives when it suits him, a man who lies to protect himself, a man who cannot change. The second half of the episode becomes less about police and evidence and more about father and son. Dexter begs Harrison to run away with him, to leave Iron Lake and start over somewhere new. He paints the same picture he once painted for himself: a clean slate, a chance to begin again. But Harrison has learned too much. He knows the cycle will never end. He knows his father will always leave bodies behind. And more importantly, he knows that following Dexter means losing himself. The emotional weight builds like a storm. Every word between them feels final. Dexter, for the first time, looks vulnerable. He begins to admit, even in subtle ways, that he is not the hero he imagined. He begins to accept that his son doesn't need to inherit the code, he needs to escape. By the time we reach the final confrontation, the episode has stripped Dexter bare. No masks, no excuses, no more dark passenger to justify the killings. Just a man who cannot run anymore. The irony is heartbreaking. The man who spent his life hiding in shadows now stands fully exposed. Not to the world, but to the only person who truly matters, his son, and it's here that the final scene takes shape. One of the most shocking and emotional moments in Dexter's long history. The father who always believed he could control the darkness is finally brought down. Not by the law, not by another killer, but by his own blood. This breakdown of episode 10 shows how carefully the showrunners built toward this ending. Every step: the arrest, Angela's confrontation, Logan's death. Harrison's realization pulls Dexter closer to the inevitable. The finale doesn't feel like a sudden twist. It feels like a closing door, one that has been swinging shut for years, finally locking him in, and that's what makes it so powerful. This isn't just the end of a story, it's the end of an illusion. The final scene of Dexter. New Blood is one of the most haunting in television history, not because of the violence, but because of the silence that surrounds it. It is not filled with dramatic music or chaotic editing. Instead, it is still, heavy, and painfully human. For the first time in his life, Dexter Morgan is not in control. And for the first time, his son, Harrison, steps into the light of choice. The moment begins with a conversation simple, quiet, but loaded with decades of weight. Dexter pleads with Harrison to understand him, to run away with him, to accept the idea that killing can be justified if it follows a code. But Harrison's eyes tell the truth. He no longer believes. He has seen the cracks in his father's logic. He has seen Dexter cross the line with Logan's death. And he knows that, if they run, they will only be running toward more blood. What makes this scene so devastating is the role reversal. For years, Dexter has been the teacher, the guide, the one passing down rules from his father Harry to his own son. But here, it is Harrison who becomes the voice of reason. Harrison is the one holding up the mirror. He tells Dexter the truth he has avoided all his life. You're not doing this for justice. You're doing this for yourself. Those words pierce deeper than any knife, and then comes the most important shift of all Dexter's own realization. In that final conversation, you can almost see it in his face in the way he drops his defenses. For the first time, he admits what he has never admitted before. He is a killer, and he cannot stop. He is not a hero, not even a necessary evil. He is simply the very thing he has hunted. In that clarity, Dexter does something shocking. He gives Harrison permission. He tells him in a voice that is almost calm, "You have to take the shot." This is not just a surrender to death, it is a surrender to truth. Dexter is acknowledging that his life has become a cycle of lies, a chain of destruction that will never end. By telling Harrison to pull the trigger, he is giving his son a chance to break free from that cycle. It is a twisted kind of love, perhaps the only true act of love Dexter has ever given. Harrison raises the gun, and the silence thickens. The camera lingers, not on gore, but on the emotions, the trembling hand of a son forced to do what no son should, and the calm acceptance of a father who finally sees the end. When the shot rings out, it is not played as a triumph. It is not victory, it is tragedy. Yet in that tragedy there is also release. Symbolically, this moment is layered. Harrison's bullet is not just ending Dexter's life, it is ending the illusion of the code, the myth of the dark passenger as something noble. It is ending the idea that killing can ever bring peace. For Harrison, pulling the trigger is the only way to save himself from becoming the next version of his father. In killing Dexter, Harrison kills the legacy of violence that haunted their family. The aftermath is equally important. Harrison does not gloat. He does not celebrate. Instead, he looks broken, shaken, human. He immediately gathers his things and drives away, leaving Iron Lake behind. The show makes it clear, Harrison's journey is just beginning, but unlike Dexter, he is free to choose a different path. Whether he does or not is left open, but the important thing is that he can. For Dexter, this ending is both poetic and cruel. Poetic, because his life ends at the hands of the one person he truly loved. Cruel, because the only way he could give that love was by dying. His life, from the first episode to the last, has always been about blood. But in this final moment, that blood is shed not in secret, not as part of the code, but as justice delivered by his own son. Fans debated whether this was the right ending. Some felt it was rushed, others saw it as perfect closure. But one thing cannot be denied. It is final. There is no sailing into storms, no hiding in lumberyards, no escaping into the shadows. The story ends with Dexter lying dead, the cycle broken, the legacy severed. What makes this final scene unforgettable is not just that Dexter dies, it's that he chooses to die. By giving Harrison permission, Dexter finally does the one thing he could never do before: accept responsibility. For years, he deflected, rationalized, and hid behind his code. But in this moment, stripped of lies, he faces himself. And in that acceptance, he finds the closest thing to redemption he could ever have. The last shot of the series, Harrison driving into the unknown, is bittersweet. It asks a question rather than giving an answer. Can the son escape the sins of the father, or will the darkness follow him too? The show leaves us with that haunting uncertainty, but also with the feeling that, unlike Dexter, Harrison has a chance, and that is what gives the ending its power. It is not about Dexter's death. It is about Harrison's life. Asterisk, the ending of Dexter, New Blood is more than just the death of a character. It is the collapse of a myth, the tearing down of a story we've been telling ourselves for nearly 2 decades. For years, Dexter invited us into his world. He whispered in voiceovers, he justified his killings, he gave us the illusion that murder could be righteous if wrapped in rules. And many of us, against our better judgment, rooted for him. That is the brilliance and the danger of Dexter. Morgan, he forced us to question where morality begins and ends, but in the finale, all illusions are stripped away. The code? Broken. The dark passenger? Just an excuse? The charm? Exposed as manipulation. What's left is not a hero, not even an anti-hero, but a man who has finally run out of shadows to hide in. And by letting Harrison pull the trigger, the show delivers a truth we often resist. Actions have consequences, and no matter how clever, no matter how careful, escapes them forever. One of the most striking takeaways from the finale is the way it reframes the original series. In Dexter's first run, we often saw him as someone who balanced 2 worlds, the monster and the man, the killer and the father, the predator and the protector. But in New Blood, we see the cost of that balance. Every life he took, every lie he told led here. Angela's heartbreak, Harrison's disillusionment, Logan's death, they're not accidents. They're the result of years of Dexter choosing blood over truth. The finale doesn't just punish Dexter for one mistake. It punishes him for the entire arc of his life, and yet, within this punishment, there is something resembling redemption. Not the kind of redemption where Dexter gets to live happily ever after, but the kind where he finally faces reality. His final act asking Harrison to end his life isn't about escaping justice. It's about giving his son a chance to live without his shadow. In that moment, Dexter stops running. He accepts. And in that acceptance, he gives Harrison the gift of freedom, even though it costs him everything. Thematically, the show is asking us to reflect on cycles. Dexter was shaped by his father Harry, raised with the code as both a shield and a curse. Harry's teachings created Dexter, but they also trapped him. And now, Dexter faces the same question with Harrison. Will the cycle continue, or will it finally break? By allowing Harrison to kill him, Dexter answers that question in the only way he can, by ending himself. The sins of the father stop here, but the beauty of the ending lies in its ambiguity. Yes, Harrison drives away with a chance to start fresh. But the question lingers, can anyone touched by Dexter's darkness ever truly escape it? Will Harrison carry trauma, guilt, or even temptation into his future? Or will he use this painful moment as the foundation for a different kind of life? The show leaves that door open, giving viewers space to imagine what comes next. Some may see Harrison as free. Others may see him as doomed. That uncertainty is the mark of a powerful ending. For fans, the finale also acts as a conversation with the past. The original series finale left Dexter alive, working as a lumberjack in self-imposed exile, a decision many saw as a betrayal of the story's promise. New Blood corrects that. It delivers closure not through spectacle, but through honesty. Dexter doesn't get away this time. He doesn't escape justice, legal or emotional. Instead, he dies in a way that feels both inevitable and deeply personal. The circle is closed, and what about us, the viewers who followed Dexter for years? The takeaway is as much about us as it is about him. We were complicit in rooting for him, cheering when he outsmarted the police, nodding when he followed his code. But in the end, we're reminded of the truth. Dexter was never a hero. He was a killer who wrapped his violence in philosophy. The finale forces us to let go of the fantasy and face the reality. And maybe that's the only way a story like this can end. As the credits roll on New Blood, what remains is a sense of bittersweet finality. Dexter's story is over, but its impact lingers. The image of Harrison driving away isn't just the end of the series, it's the torch being passed. Not necessarily for another season, but as a symbol of possibility. Harrison is the question mark at the end of Dexter's bloody sentence, and that is the brilliance of this ending. It gives us closure, but not comfort. It answers the story of Dexter, but leaves us haunted by Harrison. It forces us to reckon with the truth. Every dark passenger leaves a trail. The only real question is, what do we do with it? In the end, Dexter, New Blood delivers something the original series couldn't, an ending that feels earned. Tragic, yes. Brutal, yes. But honest. And maybe honesty, after all the lies and masks, was the only ending Dexter Morgan ever deserved.